Okay, hello everyone. I call this meeting to order. It is 6:18 p.m. Sorry for the few-minute delay there. Okay, so first off, of course, if you have your phones, please put them on silent. And do we have any guests this evening?
Yes.
Don't be scared. What? Oh, hi. She said you would be here till later. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your time here and our lovely food that everybody brought as well, learning with us. And do we have any interns? I know the class is finished, but do we still have some that haven't quite graduated yet?
We have somebody graduated.
Awesome. Yeah?
You want to do that now?
Yes. Come on up. It's part of the initiation.
Who's going to take a picture?
Okay, Ingrid's got the camera. There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Paul, do you need?
Go, April.
I can speak.
Okay. Paul's just going to say it.
Where's Tim? Come on, Tim. On behalf of the Master Gardener Organization and our training class, we want to give this graduation to Bobby Brown. She was in class 39 and she finally got her hours.
Oh, you want? Okay, sorry. She says another one. Photographer. Okay. Come on. Okay. Oh, we're taking one more.
And Heidi has already
Okay, now I'm in
volunteered.
front. I've got everybody. Oh, that's mine. Yeah. Are we good? Yep.
Okay, we're doing fashion poses. I don't know. Oh my goodness. She's gonna be mad
I
at
was
me.
going to say, Heidi has already volunteered. She's working in the system and she's manning the camera tonight.
Woo-hoo! Thank you.
Hope she doesn't break it.
We got insurance.
She's been doing a great job. Okay. Okay. Okay, so first off, because we had off June for the summer socials, so today I call for a motion to approve and vote the membership meeting minutes from May 16th, because we didn't get a chance to do that yet. Okay, Wendy first. Who's second? Okay, Denise. Okay, Denise or Kathleen is second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay. And I just want to let you know that the board meeting minutes from June are now posted to VMS, and July will be soon. Benna was on vacation, much deserved. So that'll be up there very soon. And for the nominating committee, this will be mentioned a couple of times, but Benna and Bill are putting together a nominating committee for next year's officers. So if you are interested in running, please contact her tonight because Bill is on a cruise. I'm so jealous. I know you guys are too. And just as a reminder for those of you that may be newer to the group, our board meetings are the second Thursday each month. Starts at 6 p.m. Now, during the summer, we had them virtually, but now we're going to start being back up in the office upstairs. Hopefully the air conditioner works better because last time that we were up there, it was quite toasty. So it's just saying, please arrive early to ensure your seating. If we need to move around, we can. It just depends on if there's someone else meeting in the building. So normally it's up in the office. And I had some people asking me what we've been up to during the summer from the board, so I just wanted to do a quick little overview. So we've been working on the nominating committee, getting that ready. Asset protection meeting we had on the 27th of June, and that is also up. We were going through talking about our inventory, our current policies, insurance. I know Claire is looking that up for us. On our things like the camera, but other ones in our system as well. And then, the updating and review of the PPM. Some of you may know, and some of you may not, that we do that every few years. We go back through, we make sure that everything is still current with our group, that there's no obvious like misspellings or whatever needs to be done, and then we'll vote as a group towards the end of the year. T-shirt updates, we've mentioned this a couple of times, that we have some different prints and logos for the green shirts that we're going to put for sale for those that are supporters of Guadalupe County Master Gardeners, because we had some people asking us last year. So just some funny things to put on the back of that shirt. We have a press, so we can do it ourselves, very little to do there. And I'll show you some examples as soon as we get that all going. Fall prep for the gardens. I know Maria, she's gotten back and she's just going real good at that. Budget preparation. She's going to be having a point of contact meeting for all of them. We're going to have some helpful tips, requirements, any changes to the process, just to try to make it a little bit smoother. We've been talking about ways, both with other members in the group and with the board, just brainstorming about that. The shed and office cleanup, I wanted to say great job for doing it, but please alert us next time because none of us were aware beforehand. I know Ernestine called me and told me that they were working on it, but we didn't know that it was going on, so not everybody was represented. So good job. If you have something that you have though in the shed that you need to put in there, of course, just label it, put your point of contact number, so that if someone needs something in that box or in that tote, they want to double check before using it. Upcoming plant sales, we have the county fair on October 10th, and it goes through the 13th. There's a setup a couple of days before that. Kathleen is going to send out, sorry, my voice is really dry today. Kathleen is going to send out a volunteer sign-up sheet for that. And then Maria will be doing one for the Pecan Fest. If you have any grow team supplies still that you have out, please return them. If you are still growing plants, just let us know so that we can be prepared as well. Plants are needed for the project gardens and upcoming plant sales. And if you have some plants that need babysitting, I was made aware today that there were some, just contact me. I have some space at mine, and I think some others do as well. Okay, next we have Denise with our awards.
All right, next slide. There we go. So, Starfish Awards. I know I had a couple of you contact me and would like to nominate some people. You don't need to let me know. You just, at this point, if anybody would like to nominate anybody or present a starfish, please come on up.
I'll do hers. I'm going to do yours too.
Thank you.
Do you want a mic or are you good?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
So I want to present a starfish to someone who did an amazing job with the flip. Pam Malone. There she is, and on her beauty right
Woohoo!
She did, I mean, we weren't going to have a float, and she decided to take it on. And she was able to get people out from our class, from class number 39, and from some other classes as well. And she came up with a theme, and just was rocking and rolling. So, happy starfish. Thank you so much. Oh, and we won something.
Woohoo!
We got a recognition award. I wanted to share with everybody, and thank you for those who came out to help us. We got an honorable mention for the float. It worked out really well. Everybody did a great job. The good Lord was watching out after us to take care of all of this too. Thank you for Ernestine and Janice and everybody who they answered a lot of my questions all the way through, for good backup systems and just for planning in general. Keepers was wonderful. It's a very nice place to go and shop a little bit too.
And all the people who donated plants.
Yeah,
Gave
everybody
babysit
gave us plants to use and furniture, and it just worked out really well. There's some pictures online, so you can certainly look at that. But thank you so much for everybody's help and understanding and getting this done. We really appreciate it. Great job.
Carol over over here also wanted me to nominate Ann Otnod. She is always there to help and take over when needed. I think this was a sneak attack. There you go. Thank you so much for being there for her. She just didn't want to.
That's it. The other one didn't show up, so
Okay.
what's next?
Okay. Okay, and next we have a very important one here. It is the Master Gardener of the season for summer. And with her efforts with the Mill Street Community Garden, Benna has been nominated as the Master Gardener of the season. Just a little something. I mean, it's not a huge surprise, I'm sure, because everybody knows how much she did. Wish we could get you so much more, but.
Is it a perverted mug?
Well, I'd probably have to get a different one for that, but.
You're never too old to play in the dirt. That's not bad. So
Oh, sure.
it's just a little dirty, not perverted.
And then let me go to the side. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then we have Ingrid. Actually, come on back up. Here we go. Do you need? Okay. There you go.
Okay,
I'll hold it.
so we're trying something a little bit different. What we're wanting to do is kind of streamline our workflow. So I came up with a Google form, and I emailed a lot of the POCs. So if you're needing some marketing, you're needing videos, or whatever it is that you're needing to promote what you're doing, please fill out the form. It's very, very simple, so we can get an idea of what you need. Not only that, but it's going to help us to schedule things, because we need to put things on the calendar. You need to know when we're coming out, and we also need to, have our ducks in a row. So if you could do that for us. Let's see. We are also working on a project where we're going to be doing interviews with POCs for our institutional memory. But not only that, but we're also going to be breaking up some of those interviews and putting them on Facebook and using them for marketing purposes. But we're wanting to do interviews and little documentaries, I guess, so that people know who we were. I mean, the Guadalupe Master Gardeners is going to go on for 100 years. But unfortunately, not all of us are going to be here for that. But we do want to have some kind of history about the people who came before and what they did and how they contributed. And so we're wanting to, we have a project that we're wanting to be ongoing for that. And then we also, we're wanting the point of contacts to come to us if they need to advertise, help them advertise and do campaigns for their events. So please feel free to, to contact me, and definitely fill out that form, because then that gets us going. Yeah.
Will the form also be available, a manual form?
Yes.
Yeah, so at our POC meeting, I'm requesting if we could have those forms available so I can give out to the POCs.
Okay.
That way they can just fill it out. Some people are not tech savvy on the computer.
I can do that for you.
That would be
And
great.
then we're also going to put them on the website. So I'm going to have David put it up for us, and then on VMS, we need to have it on there too, hopefully in the news section. So it's right there. Already cool. So that's it. Thank you.
And if Bill was here, he would also say it is for the pictures, and the videos are also for awards. So whenever they do that at the convention and we have awards and we want to represent ourselves, just something that is easy to give. Yes.
That's another thing too.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So we're putting together in our Google Drive, we already have it, a photos file. And so I'm going to break it down into the different the different projects, but we're wanting photos for those, from those projects, because we can use them, we can put them on Facebook, we can do so many things with those photos to promote, to promote Guadalupe Master Gardeners. So I know you guys have loads and loads of pictures, so if we can have that. Also, David is wanting more recent photos from each of your projects so that he can update the website with those recent photos. So if you have some, please send them to David. We're also going to put all of those in our folders, but he needs them like as soon as he already made the pages. He just needs the photos. So if you guys can just send him the photos, it'd be great. Okay. Thanks.
I'm going to make a note for myself too. Send David photos. Awesome. Okay, and since, oh, there's our float. Wrong side, wrong time, but yay, float! And such pretty pictures. Okay, since Bill is gone on the cruise, he asked me to go through his slides for him tonight. So we're gonna go through education snapshot. He has it on here. Oh, we're doing better on how many people are putting in their hours. So if you haven't put in your hours, do so, please. Oh, we have the hydroponics by our very own Beth. We're going to have that here at the AgriLife building on Wednesday the 14th. Oh, April. She has a canning basics on Saturday the 10th of August at the Seguin Public Library. And then on Saturday, August 10th, in the Schertz Public Library, we have Peter Hernandez talking about composting. His Speaker Bureau Shadow Program. I thought about borrowing my kids' dress-up stuff and talking about it through here. I always think of Carmen Sandiego whenever I see this picture of his. But what it is if you are interested in being a part of the Speaker Bureau program, but you're a little bit nervous, you can follow someone who is experienced and already doing it with this shadow program. So his contact's on the bottom. All of our monthly meetings, lunch and learn videos, they are on our website. So if you miss it for some reason, it's on there. Oh, and before I forget, before you, Maria, he had also told me he didn't have a chance to put this in the slides, but as part of the educational outreach to the libraries and for the Master Gardener, Ask a Master Gardener program, he ordered a whole bunch of seeds, and I mean a pound of seeds of each plant. So 900 plus packets he's getting ready to go to the libraries and for the Ask a Master Gardener program. So that is, I was like, how many? What did you do? And we have some people helping him out with that. But next we have Maria. Oh, let's see. She's back with us this month. Thank you. Yay. Do you need? Go for it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is pass around the list of all the approved gardens and projects that we have for Master Gardeners to get their volunteer hours. And you can look on here. If you happen to be a project coordinator, just look over the information, and if there's anything that needs to be updated, go ahead and update it with the pen that I'm going to pass around. And also I want the ones that are not project coordinators just to look over the list, because they are a lot of vacant positions. And if you're interested in signing up for those projects, then just come see me after the meeting, or you can email me as well. So I'll go ahead and pass that out.
Okay. There's a pin right there. There we go. Thank you.
And so that's always a working document, because we always have projects and that we
Kayla
get every
said
year.
she'd do the tree, by the way.
Huh?
Kayla said she'd do the tree, by the way. I didn't get to tell her to edit it yet, so I'll let you put it in whenever it comes around. Here we go.
So this is a working document all the time. So we always have projects that come on board every year, or we have projects that are, or gardens that fall off. As you know, we did lose a few gardens because of Wilson County, because they have they're starting up their own master gardening organization. So you can just look at it. If you have any questions, just email me or get with me after the meeting. Let's see. In case you guys did not know, Growing Future Gardens is now called Mill Street Community Garden. So I don't know.
Is it this
if you guys
kind?
were aware of that. That was a change as of at the end of May when we had the grand opening, beginning of May. And because we didn't see you guys in June, we just wanted to announce that today. Okay, urgent volunteer request. So Gutierrez Park still needs gardeners to help water the park. As you know, they don't have an irrigation system due to a lot of reasons. They are owned by the Schertz Parks and Wildlife there, and there's been some issues of theft. So they have to still hand water everywhere. So if you would like to be a volunteer to garden an area once a week, that would be great. I'm volunteering myself to water on Mondays, and Ann was there. She's there all the time volunteering as well. So just email me back. I send an email out to everybody. Just reply back to that email, and I can put you on the schedule. Volunteer hours report. So here is a volunteers hours report. I provided this back in February. I just want everybody to have a big view of like where everyone's volunteering. As you can see, the ones highlighted in blue are big major gardens where people are getting most of their volunteer hours. But we need to give the other gardens some love as well. So if you can see some of the other gardens, let's see, who's the lowest one? The youth education gardening is very low. I think the POC for that is Beth. Is that correct, Beth? No?
No.
Okay. So we'll have to figure something out there. There's a lot of other gardens, like the Marion Park could always use help on Mondays. And again, here are the areas where we have gardens and you can volunteer your time. I know it's really tough right now because of the summer, but these project coordinators really need your help to go out there and help out. So, and again, this document that we're passing around, that's going to be updated and it's going to be uploaded into VMS and also, where else? Our website?
We can,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, save the date. So July 25th, we're going to have our next project coordinator POC meeting. It's going to be at 6 p.m. More than likely, it's going to be here. Everyone's been emailing me back telling me that they want it here, so more than likely it's going to be here again. I am going to have it also available through Zoom or Google Meet. So if you're not able to physically be here, we're still going to do it. You can view it over the computer, and we'll be able to see you and talk to you as well. Again, this meeting was very productive when we had it back in February. We talked about what your needs and wants are, and if there's any issues, major projects going on in your gardens. This is where you can voice how we can help you more. Okay, so please try to make it for all the project coordinators. This is going to be a very good meeting.
We'll get you ready for the budget time too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, get you ready for the budget time. Volunteers needed, again, for recording and photographing, for continuing education presentations, and then we also are looking for members to serve for the next 2025 Board of Directors. And Kathleen, would you like to come up and talk about or you guys had the meeting already?
The county fair.
The county fair? You guys are good? Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's it.
Oh,
Thank you very
okay.
much.
But it wouldn't hurt to mention that this will be my last year to do the fair, and I'm looking for someone to replace me.
It'll probably take a whole group to replace you, so don't think that it only has to be one person. It can be a group. Get your friends together and be like, we're going to do the county fair. It'll all be good. It's a lot of fun. So. Oh, sorry. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okie dokie. I'm giving you May and June since we had the summer social and nobody got to see any numbers. So there's our bank account balances. No plant sales, so the sales tax stayed the same. Oh, my green item, discuss sales tax exemption. I have gotten I've given some of you POCs a Home Depot tax exemption form. See, I've missed a few. So if you don't have one of these for Home Depot, I've got that. And I've also got a little piece of paper for Walmart that can fold up and put in your billfold, whatever. Again, so it can be tax exempt. I've got, we're working on Amazon to get that figured out and straightened out so it can also be tax exempt. You pay for it, you get it delivered to your house, I'll reimburse you, but we won't be charged sales tax. And then HEB, I'm also working on HEB. So if you want one of these, come to me or I can email it to you. Yes, ma'am.
Are those generic or are they more specific?
Specific for Guadalupe County Master Gardeners. Specific. And so, yeah, that's the other thing. You are saying that you are going to buy something for Guadalupe County Master Gardeners. You're not going to buy it for yourself. It's for Guadalupe County Master Gardeners. So pay your sales tax for your personal items, but for Guadalupe County, you can get it tax exempt and then I will reimburse you. Or if you're doing it for the benefit of Guadalupe County, you can do that too. At least you will have to pay sales tax. So that's it. Come and see me or let other people know that we're working on that, trying to get that going. I'll get this one. Okay.
I haven't used that yet.
Huh?
I haven't used that yet, so we'll see.
Okay.
If it's connected, go for it.
Come along.
Oh,
with
it did
me.
it. There we go.
All right, there's your income for May and June. So $650 in May and $742 in June. The Class 40 tuition has been coming in. And then the new interns becoming members, they've got their dues coming in. And our expenses, last month in May, the class coordinators paid for a bunch of books, so that was $1,600. And then the rest of the expenses are not that much or not out of the ordinary. So the bottom line is in May, we spent $1,400 more than we took in. In June, we have $150 to the good. And for the whole year to date, through June, 6 months, we've spent $3,800 more than we've taken in. So that's all I have to say. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, that was quick. Thank you. Good catch. Good catch. Good catch. Okay, Wendy, come on up, our vice president.
I think I have my agenda.
I don't have one right here. Let's see. Do you? There you go. Yep, that's you.
Okay. So, the vice president's real easy. Just get the speakers and you back up the rest of the board wherever they need you. So, I just wanted to a lot of people said what's happening the rest of the year, so I went ahead and filled that out. Tonight we have back by popular demand Andy Blair, by request that he's back with us, a different topic. We're going to have Stephen Granger with Rainwater Catchment, Nikki Lake, I don't know, Bill has had her here before. She's with the Wildflower Center out of San Marcos. She's very interesting. Then we're going to have our friend Mark Fanek, and a new one for the nighttime, Charlie B Company is going to be here, and then the Winter Social. And I just want to put my plea out here that if you think you might want to be on the board next year, to get with the nominating committee or to put someone, if you talk before you put someone on that committee, make sure you speak with them. But it's really important. It's really important that you all, this is your group. We're all master gardeners, and so we just need to represent everybody, and that's something. So right now it's zilch, so we got to make that better. Right?
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so can we take a short break while we get him set up?
We got 12 minutes.
Okay, you got 12. Wait. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just a brief follow-up. I was going to ask to speak, and you kind of stole my thunder about the board of directors meeting. So good job, okay? But
That's
I
my
just
job.
want to add to it that the board of directors meeting, these fine folks, they're working on all our behalves, okay? Because they're elected and or appointed, and they're doing the best they can with the input that they give. So we need to maybe share input, good or bad. I mean, they need to know everything. But above and beyond that, while they're doing business for ourselves, I've attended maybe 4 out of the last 6 meetings for this year, and then I didn't even count.
You've been at most this year. You should have just been on the board.
But it surprises me that there's only maybe 1 or 2 extra people besides the board of directors and the actual officers that ever attend. But I challenge you all to maybe go out and come to a board of directors meeting and see how they take care of their action. And everything's done nice and neat and so forth. If you want to address the board, reach out to those 2 fine ladies and say, yeah, I'd like to have 2 minutes to discuss this new opportunity or whatever, okay? But there's more. And the thing that she did not put on her slide up there, if you read your BPM, if you attend an hour, 2-hour board meeting, that's continuing education hours.
Because I already had 5 slides.
I
I had 5 slides already.
It's a cold environment. Eat a sandwich, eat it before the meeting starts, and we're happy to have you all, okay? Thank you.
But if it's too late and you can't, all the meeting minutes are there. And if you ever have any questions about what you see on the meeting minutes, because I know that we try to make it less pages, contact. Yes, go for it.
How much did you pay Tim?
Nothing?
Nothing, but we're very
I get an
appreciative.
extra brownie.
He attends, I think he's been every one. Maybe
Almost
this year,
every one.
Maybe missed one.
Even the virtual ones.
Yes, but he is giving us a lot of input, and we don't, that doesn't fall on deaf ears, because trust me, with this board of directors that you have right now, like, we're all in, and we just continue to be that. We're not gonna stop.
We stay there till the work is done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so your CE hours could be as much as 2.5 at a board meeting, just saying.
We're staying till it's done. Okay, so we're gonna take a break. Yes.
Can I have just a minute?
Yes.
How many of you have the beautiful, what's the name of that plant? Passion flower plant?
The purple one.
Purple
The really
flower.
fun, funky
Have
one.
any of you ever had the fruit grow on? I had the plant, first time ever, I had 12 of these beautiful ones.
Mine never make it past the deer.
Well, I just cut it open.
So April,
It's got seeds in it. When I went on the internet,
That's not right.
it said they are edible. I've never seen this before. I've had the plant for I don't know how many umpteen years.
But that's not ripe yet. I mean, you could eat the seeds.
It feels, it's hollow. It feels like it's a wiffle ball.
It could blow away.
It feels like.
My daughter loves them. She makes potions out of them.
So if anybody wants to look at it or smell it or whatever, it's up over here.
Mine have never made it past that because of the deer. Yes, April.
I just got breaking news. If you're thinking about doing the hands-on canning class that we're doing on September 21st.
Is it full?
It's sold out.
Yep. Woo!
I'm going.
Bill said that's raised over $1,000.
So if you're gonna think about taking it, you need to get in there and pay for it.
Already.
It's gonna be very exciting. We're gonna have a small group down here where we'll actually do a batch of jam or 2 batches. We're gonna have another group upstairs in that kitchen area where we do a different one. So you're gonna have plenty of time for one-on-one interaction. We have
How many students are in each class? I don't know.
Mary Stublu, who's also a great cook. She's sick today.
Oh.
Pam's going to help out. Claire has volunteered to help out. So we're going to have plenty of helpers, a lot of one-on-one
Bill's gonna be there.
instruction on how to do the water bath canning. So afternoon class, I think we have probably 12 seats left, and that's it. So.
If my very responsible daughter would like to attend the class with me, can she?
Oh,
She's 14.
I would think that would be okay.
So she's the one.
weren't even with boiling hot water.
Do you know how many students are in each class? I want to, April, I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
Oh, I'm done. Go ahead.
No, Maria, I interrupted Maria. No, my question is how many students in each class?
We have 20 in the morning and 20 in the
Wow.
afternoon. Bill and I are both taking a group of 10 each. So it's
Awesome.
10 down here and 10 upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, take your break. I'll give you a couple minutes right before to bring y'all back in. So listen up.
He was with us in February, and he's back to do Understanding Weeds, which I think is going to be a great program. He said he is a jack of all trades and a master of none, but he knows everything, okay, about this stuff and what we do. He knows it, and he currently works for TxDOT, but that's just his day job. Then he gets to spend time with us. But we appreciate him coming back with a new topic, and he's very informative. And just give him your respect, and he's going to give our program real quick. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Sound check, are we okay on the recording? All right. So before we jump into Death by PowerPoint, I'm just going to give you all a little bit of kind of my journey with weeds and trying to understand weeds. So I guess the story kind of starts back when I was about 5 years old, and I was the youngest out of 5 kids, and my daddy had a pig farm. And one of the few things that you can do when you're the littlest kid at that age is you can chop weeds. And so we had a big garden out there, about an acre and a half of all different kind of vegetables. And so, they take me out there and show me, these are the weeds, these are the ones you're going to chop with the hoe, and you go down the line and you do that, and then they can leave you to it, and there's really nothing you can mess up, right? Well, I saw what I thought was buffalo burr, but then I learned later it was watermelon coming up, and I hoed a whole row of watermelons up. So that was kind of my first memory of like learning about weeds. When you get a little older on the pig farm, you graduate to pulling weeds and chopping weeds to feed to the pigs. And so we would chop Johnson grass with the machete and haul that up and feed it to supplement kind of their grain diet, which isn't really all that healthy for them. They need some more roughage in their diet. So we'd chop Johnson grass, and we would pull what we called careless weeds, what a lot of people call Palmer's amaranth. They just kind of grew as a weed all over the farm, and the pigs just loved it. And it was really good for them. And so that was kind of a new experience for me with weeds, that they could be useful. And then as I got older and I was in college, I took a part-time job at the USDA laboratory there in Temple. And one of my main jobs was they had all these big experimental plots where they did different research with different grasses. And I was the kid that got to go pull all the weeds out of the experimental plots. And then when the Johnson grass would start to come in, I would have to go in and spray and pull and dig. And so I got a lot of first-rate experience with weeds that way. And then as I've gone further into my career and working for TxDOT, I spent a lot of time on the side of the road and going out after construction projects are done and looking at what's coming up and what seed have we put out and is it coming up. And what I've really learned from all of that is that it almost doesn't even matter what you put out. If the soil is not right, what you're going to get is weeds. And so as I've gone along in kind of my journey, I feel like I understand weeds a little bit better than I did when I started. And so I'm going to try to share some of that with y'all today. So here we go. So what is a weed? This is really, I would say this is kind of a loaded term. Everybody kind of has their own definition of what plants they would consider weeds, and even what they would call a weed. I would say the one definition I've kind of heard that most people kind of accept is it's a plant that's growing somewhere that people don't want it to be growing. And so that to me, that's not a very good definition to me, because that's pretty subjective. That's based on your own value judgment and what you think about plants. And so really any plant could be a weed by that definition, right? So I definitely know my wife would call things weeds that I would not use that derogatory term. So we're going to kind of search for some other definitions of what we think a weed might be. So some people would characterize weeds as plants that are aesthetically ugly, or they're just really plain, they're not showy, they're not ornamental, they don't have this like great aesthetic value. So anything that's growing out there that's just kind of a plain, ugly plant, or it's not flowering all the time, that's just a weed. I definitely have people in my neighborhood who probably think that about some of my plants. Other people look at weeds as, you know, they kind of signify like disorder. If you go back to the early 1800s, whenever a lot of the North American continent was kind of urbanizing and people were moving into cities, they were disturbing soil and everybody was moving in, and all of these things all kind of started happening at the same time, where you had weeds popping up and you had vagrancy and homelessness, you had diseases like malaria and typhoid and cholera, and people just kind of associated all those things together. And when you would see these poor areas in the urban sprawl where all this disturbance was going on, and you see all these tall weeds, those were the areas where, you know, that's where the poor people were, that's where the diseases were. And so they've kind of just associated that, and we've kind of brought that into our collective consciousness as a society, that when you see an area that's got a lot of weeds, it's just kind of, there's something wrong there, there's a disorder. Some people look at, you know, in the agricultural world and maybe in people's gardens, people just look at weeds. Those are plants that are competitors with crops or desirable plants that we want to grow. And so weeds are kind of like bullies. You know, they're the big, strong plants that come in and they root out and they outgrow and outcompete all the plants we want to grow. And so I would say, you know, coming up in the world of science and working at a USDA laboratory for a little while, this is kind of the version of weeds that I kind of learned as a scientist. But as I got a little older and as I started thinking about it a little bit more, I realized that we kind of have a bias toward, when we look at how organisms interact with each other, we think that they're always just in competition only. And we just kind of discount the things that they might do to help each other. So we see a weed growing in a field where we've planted some crop, and we think it's taking water from those other plants. It's going to crowd them out, and it's going to take sunlight from them. We want to keep the rows open and bare so that those plants can grow to their fullest. Well, what we don't realize is that sometimes different types of plants help each other out. Some types of plants may be able to uptake nutrients that the other ones can't, and they'll actually exchange with each other in the soil. The weeds, whenever they die, they'll form a mulch on the soil surface that will help keep in soil moisture. And so even if they're in competition for part of their life, when they die, they are contributing benefits back into the soil. So we have to kind of get past this zero-sum thinking that it's only the weeds or it's only the crops, because the plants themselves don't really even see it that way. The other thing I would point out is, if weeds are these like ultimate competitors, these bullies, like, why aren't they everywhere? Why isn't the whole world just covered in only weeds and we don't have any of these later successional plants? Anybody?
Because we kill them.
So that's a good answer. I'll give you a little anecdote here to think about this. So I was at a training a couple years ago down in the Houston area, and we got the opportunity to go out and look at some native coastal prairie that's managed by the Nature Conservancy down there. A pretty good sized tract. It had never been plowed in its entire history. It's always been a coastal prairie. They'd cut it as like a hay meadow for a while. And so it's this like nice intact tall grass prairie with all those climax dominant tall grass prairie species. And as we were driving down the road going out there, all along the side of the road are all of these invasive, terrible weeds that I look at, I just think they're gonna take over the world. All of these old world blue stems, silky blue stem, Clayburgh blue stem, Paraguayan windmill grass, all these things that are just all along the roads that we get out on the property, and there's like a little road that you can kind of drive down through the middle of the prairie. And there were a few of those here and there, and then there were a few kind of native weedy things, but once you got out in the prairie, you didn't see any of those plants. And so there was something about that intact community of plants that was excluding these weeds. So I want to think about, are weeds the real problem? If you have weeds coming up somewhere, or are they just a symptom of a larger problem, something else maybe that's going on in the soil? Okay, so this is the point in the talk where somebody's sitting here thinking, yeah, but you don't know about Johnson grass. You don't know about nutsedge. Okay, and I do. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference in, let's say, perniciousness of annual weeds versus perennial weeds. So I'm using weeds kind of interchangeably here, but there are differences in what resources that the annual weeds versus perennial weeds put into like surviving. And so some of these perennial weeds can be a little bit more harder to get rid of just by managing the soil. So as we talk about, listening to the soil and all of that, you may be a little more skeptical about how you would get rid of perennial weeds that way, but there is a difference. The other thing I want to do is I want to think about how other people, kind of throughout human history, have thought about weeds. So everybody in this room descends from people who lived in small bands and were hunter-gatherers for like 99-point-something% of human history. And so if you look at how hunter-gatherers live today, they don't acknowledge, there's no weeds to them. That's all just different foods and medicines that they can go out and find out in the wild. And if they happen to grow right outside your house in a disturbed area, all the better. You don't have to go looking for them. If you look at Europe during kind of the medieval times, pre-industrial times, they would write these herbal books where they would describe the virtues of each and every plant. And they basically just assumed that every plant, no matter how small or where it came up, had some sort of purpose. And so that's kind of, we don't really think about it that way. We think these weeds, they just don't really have a purpose. They're just kind of in the way, right? If you go to East Asian cultures and Southeast Asian cultures, they have these long traditions of taking these weedy plants and either using them as food or as medicine. And really, in a lot of the cultures, food and medicine are kind of the same thing. You eat these plants so that you're healthier. And so, these traditions that go back thousands of years, and you go to these countries now, and you'll find in local markets, you'll find all of these wild gathered weeds, things that we would, go out and hoe in the field. They go out and pick and sell at the market. The Japanese New Year, whenever they have their New Year festival, everybody goes out and kind of parties and eats a bunch of like sweets and junk food. And then the week after that, they have this thing where they go out and they gather the 7 herbs of springtime, and they include things like henbit and shepherd's purse and chickweed, things that we just think are as, weeds in your yard to be gotten rid of. And those are sort of a medicine, kind of a tonic for, we overdid a little bit. We need to go in and get some minerals and vitamins and some good plants back in our life to improve things. So, and then if you go into Latin America, especially in Mexico, where they have subsistence agriculture versus kind of our cash crop style agriculture, you've got people out there working fields by hand, collecting beans and squash and corn. And they have what they call weeds as quelites. And they're basically all the other little plants that come up as weeds in the field. They'll pick them when they're young. And some of the plants, even that are poisonous or that are really distasteful as they get older, are actually palatable when they're young. And so they pick them at different ages, and then they eat those, and that's just part of their daily diet. Or these little baby amaranths and all sorts of other little weeds that come up. And so they see it as like a resource rather than a nuisance. So, are we any closer to a definition of weeds? Is there an objective definition for weeds? I'm going to give you a couple of things that I think kind of characterize weedy plants. And that's that weeds are generally going to be things that are pioneer plants. So there are plants that are adapted to grow in disturbed areas. If you look at this top picture here, this is an area along the Llano River. This is a disturbed area. So the river floods pretty frequently, deposits all this new sand. That's not really soil, that's just kind of mineral sand that's been deposited there. And so the plants that move in and dominate those areas at first, those are kind of weedy plants, even if they're native plants. Another thing that characterizes these pioneer plants is that they grow very rapidly. Instead of putting all of their energy into, surviving over years and years and years, they have this kind of like live fast, live hard, die young kind of mentality. And so they grow really fast. And that's part of why we don't like them, is because they'll outgrow your other plants that are putting more energy into survival, and they'll kind of shade them out. The other thing they do is they reproduce prolifically, and this especially applies to annual weeds. They grow really fast and they reproduce a lot. They'll have a lot of flowers and they produce a lot of seed. And they're not really saving any energy for survival for the next year. They're putting it all into the next generation. And then some, especially the more perennial weeds, will actually spread also by clonal growth. So they'll spread through rhizomes, underground stems, and take over an area that way. But they're vital to all of these disturbed areas. Kind of their job is they go in and they're the first ones to come in and colonize. The other way I like to think about weeds is there's this term in biology called an extremophile. And it basically just means something that likes to live in an extreme environment. And so, anybody know where this picture is here at the bottom?
Mars.
Yeah, that's the surface of Mars. And so I've met plants along the way that I'm pretty sure if they had enough CO2 and a little bit of water could probably colonize the surface of Mars. And they would be these weedy plants because they can tolerate extreme heat and drought. They can tolerate really compacted soils that other plants' roots can't penetrate. Sometimes you'll have these really dry, compacted soils, but then they'll pond water on top. And so you either have no water or you have too much water. That's a bad thing. You have weedy plants that just eat that up. And then they also will occupy these really nutrient-depleted soils or even salty soils where you have a lot of anions left in there after everything else is leached out. And those are just conditions that most plants, most of our crops, most of our desirable plants cannot tolerate those extremes. And weeds do. So what is their role in nature? So we said that they will colonize inhospitable areas. So after you have a disturbance, whether that's a flood, like we talked about along the river, maybe a fire, some weeds are adapted to come in after fire and take over. Or it may just be a human-caused disturbance. It may be somewhere where we've gone in and completely tilled up all of the soil, disrupted the whole soil community, and now we're left with this dead soil or this just bacterially dominated soil that doesn't have a lot going on. Weeds can come in and take over in those areas. So everybody knows what this plant is right here? At the top? No, it's sow thistle. It's not going to do, oh, I'm hitting the wrong, there we go. It helps if I hit the right button. There it is. That's shepherd's purse. You'll notice that shepherd's purse will come up in a parking lot, in a crack. It'll come up just about anywhere. A lot of the things in the mustard family, which shepherd's purse is one, don't really use a lot of mycorrhizal fungi. They don't really depend on mycorrhizal fungi. They're one of like the few plants that don't really need them. And so they'll live in these bacterially dominated soils that don't have any mycorrhizal fungi. And they'll thrive and they'll do just fine. So that's one of the characteristics that makes them able to do that. Some people actually will use weeds to diagnose and treat disorders in their soil. So if they've got one field that has more chickweed in it, chickweed is a plant that does well in soils that have like low calcium. And so they can tell by how the weeds are changing in an area, how the soil is progressing. And so if they're doing something to try to improve their soil, what you'll see over time is that different weeds will start to disappear and new ones will show up. But eventually, if you get your soil healthy, you won't have those annual weeds anymore because you're just not going to have the conditions for them. Another thing that weeds can do in these problem soils is they can actually, some of them will hyperaccumulate certain minerals in their tissues, and when they die, those are available in the soil. And some of them will have deep tap roots. Sunflowers are really good for sending down deep tap roots to pull up resources from further down in the soil profile. And so weeds can actually do these things that will help condition and treat the mineral disorders in the soil. Another thing they do just by growing and pumping sugars down into their roots and then eventually dying and losing their roots, they're adding biomass into the soil. They're adding organic matter into the soil. And eventually what you're going to see is you're going to go from a situation where you've got, I'm hitting the wrong button again. There we go. where you start with these bacterially dominated soils on just kind of bare rock and soil, and then you have weeds, and then you have mid-successional plants, and then you have later successional plants that eventually will come in, but they can't really skip steps. You have to have that addition of organic material, addition of those sugars, addition of all those things to set it up for the next phase of succession. And then over time, if you let it go, and if you have enough rainfall and everything else, you'll end up with like climax hardwood forest in this area. So the weeds they're a really necessary step in that successional cycle though. And the other thing they do is, just by being out there, they're providing shade from their leaves onto the soil. And when they die, they form mulch that protects the soil from getting too hot and from drying out. The other thing that they do, we talked about how prolifically they grow. So that means that they're producing all of this leaf growth that is going to feed all sorts of herbivores. So things from, caterpillars to what else is an herbivore? Cows, sheep, mice, birds, rabbits. Okay. So all of these herbivores, these are plants that are designed to feed herbivores because they just produce so much leaf matter, so they're growing so fast. They also produce lots of flowers because they're trying to reproduce and spread those seeds. And so they're really, a lot of these, especially the annual weeds, are really great pollinator resources and good nectar resources. And then because they produce a lot of flowers, they also produce a lot of seed. And so that feeds all sort of what I call seedivores. I made that term up. There is a scientific term for things that eat seeds, but it just, I don't know, it didn't sound right to me. A seedivore sounded better, so I put it in there. But if any of you ever sat out and watched thistle plants in the summer when they start to go to fluff, the lesser goldfinch are just all over those. They just eat them up. They love them. And so something that most people look at and they say, oh, it's a weed, it's a thistle. It's like, yeah, but it's bird food that you don't even have to buy at the store. So let's talk a little bit about what I call the war on weeds. And this is kind of the mentality that we've developed in our kind of Western society, and in particular in North America. And I would characterize the war on weeds as kind of just being one subset of what I would call a broader war on nature. When you think about just type into your Google browser weeds, and the first words that pop up are things like eliminate, eradicate, control. Think about the verbs that you use when you talk about weeds. And do you use any positive sounding verbs when you talk about weeds? More 4-letter words maybe? Okay. But we've just learned that weeds have all of these potential benefits to them. And so do we really need to be at war with them? I think it's helpful to think about who started the war on weeds and who benefits from the war on weeds. So other than, when you're out there pulling weeds and all that, you're spending your time doing that. If you're going and buying all of these different sprays to spray on weeds, are you benefiting from that? Is there a chemical company that's maybe benefiting from that? And so I think a lot of the messaging that we get and that we've gotten, at least since the end of World War II, whenever we pumped all this money into keeping chemical companies open in case we had another war and needed to ramp up ammunition production, there's been this kind of constant messaging for a couple of generations now that, weeds are bad, chemicals are good, chemicals will kill the weeds. And what we've seen over that time is that weeds find ways around that. And if only that were, if only the weeds could win, then they would just win. But then that just means we got to go find new chemicals. And so there's kind of this endless cycle of, all of this money and all this research put into finding new ways to kill weeds with chemicals that doesn't really benefit anybody except for the chemical companies. So think about that war and whether it's something that you want to be a part of in that way. Even if you talk, so I'm a biologist. I work with a lot of other biologists and conservationist kind of people. And they would say they are at war with invasive species. And so invasive species, these are these weedy things that have come from somewhere else in the world, and they've come here and they're wreaking havoc and they're bullies and they're taking over all of our natural areas, and they're destroying biodiversity. And first, I think about, if I were an invasive species, or if I were like say a dandelion, and a person came to me and said, "You're an invasive species," I would say, "Me? Look at you!" So, I mean, humans are kind of the ultimate invasive species, right? Like, we have spread ourselves all around the entire globe, from where we started in Africa. Everywhere we've gone, we've changed the environment to our own needs. And so, if we're going to put all of this like anger and bitterness and all this onto invasive species, I think it's helpful to think about that that's kind of what we are too. I think the other thing that the invasive plant would say is, well, you're the one that brought me here. I just followed you and then went into all the places that you disturbed. And so I think in this war on invasive species, we need to understand what the true threats are. And there's a lot of plants that will come in that are invasive, that are not native, that will come in and they'll take over areas that are really disturbed and where the soil is really in poor condition, and they'll thrive in those areas. And we put that on them, that they're bad and they're doing something wrong. But there's a lot of the U.S., a lot of the soil in the U.S. would be in the Gulf of Mexico were it not for some of these weeds that came in and helped stabilize after our disturbance. So, there are places where some of these species can get in and cause issues in native communities, but it's not this like all bad all the time. And then I think we have to think about, even when if we're just trying to kill the invasive species, the bad ones, the ones we think really truly are bad, Johnson grass, is there collateral damage to what we're doing? So if we're going to go in and just nuke the whole area to try to get rid of this one bad thing, are we resetting that whole successional process? Are we taking it all the way back to zero with that soil? Are we just creating more weed habitat? And so sometimes in our zealousness to go in and get rid of these bad things, we end up doing more damage than good, and we end up creating more weed habitat for future weeds to come in and invade. So, food for thought. So, one thing I would encourage you to do is think about changing your verbs. When you think about weeds or even just other plants that you don't like, rather than thinking about like eliminate, eradicate, control, maybe think about words like tolerate. Can you tolerate a weed in your yard? Maybe it's going to do some good. Maybe it's not going to be good all the time. Maybe you could tolerate it. Can you collaborate with weeds? Can you find some common ground where you can align your goals with the goals of those weedy plants and the things that they do well? So what can they help you with? They can improve compacted dead soils. They can help increase soil moisture. They can feed the soil. Folks that have that do agriculture on a bigger scale, you can use cover crops to grow in your fields in the time of year when you're not growing crops, and that's providing all of these additional benefits to the soil so that it's not just sitting there starving. And a lot of the best cover crops are some of these weedy species. They can be nurse plants for if you have a weedy species that grows a little earlier in the year than the plants that you're wanting to grow later. You can plant the weedier ones first, and then come in and right as the other ones are about ready to plant, go in and just mow them down and then put your other plants in there. So there's different strategies for that. They provide forage for livestock and for wildlife. They provide resources for pollinators, but not just pollinators. If you have I'm guessing you guys are master gardeners, a lot of you guys have home gardens. So you need pollinators for some of your plants in your gardens. But you probably also, how many of y'all ever have issues with caterpillars? Do we have issues with cabbage loopers or? Okay. Well, the things that eat those and the things that are parasitoids on those mostly are different types of wasps and flies. And guess what they eat as adults? Nectar. They go and they collect nectar. And so if you have lots of weedy things that are flowering all the time throughout the year near your garden, you're going to be attracting caterpillar predators and caterpillar parasitoids. And so just having those around, this is my wild prairie garden that's on the back side of my fence. My home garden is on the other side of the fence, and so by having this here nearby, I'm hopefully attracting some of those things to my garden as well. Haven't had a lot of caterpillar issues this year, amazingly. We can use weeds as foods and medicines. If we can learn about the weeds that grow around here, we can go out and collect those and use those for our own benefits. And some people even think that they're beautiful, like myself. So with that, I want to introduce you to some of my weedy friends. This is definitely not all my weedy friends, but all of these plants are plants, I think they probably all grow in my yard somewhere. But they're plants that I can grow. And I'm going to tell you something about myself. I've been studying plants for over 25 years. And I've learned a lot about plants. I still haven't really figured out how to grow plants very well. So these are the plants that have become my friends because they grow well for me without a lot of work or a lot of effort. I don't really take good care of them, and they do great. So if you're that kind of person that struggles like me, then these might be good plants for you. And these are all going to be native plants that grow here in this area in Comal, Guadalupe, Hayes kind of county, this area around here. Some of them are going to be, I'm going to go kind of break them into annual weedy forbs, perennial weedy forbs, grasses because I love grasses, and then some shade tolerant kind of weedy plants. So first up, these are all members of the aster family. A lot of weeds, especially a lot of the annual weeds, are members of the aster family. American basket flower kind of looks like a thistle, but it gets like way bigger, and it doesn't have any stickers or prickly leaves on it. And so some people like it. Lots of pollinators like it. It's a really great pollinator plant, and a great annual native weed. Stiff green thread. This is the one that my son actually found a big patch of this on his walk home from school and started collecting it because you can use it to make like a tea. They call it Navajo tea. You just collect the plants and dry them, and then you can make a tea out of it. And so once he discovered that, he started just bringing home like sacks and sacks and sacks of it. And so now if anybody wants some Navajo tea, I know a place where you can get some. Indian blanket. Indian blanket is one of those plants that I think if it had just a little bit of water and some carbon dioxide, it could grow on the surface of Mars. You'll see this plant coming up in areas that are just completely, the soil is just completely devastated. Nothing will grow there but bastard cabbage. Indian blanket will grow there. So it's a really great pioneer plant, and really beautiful, and a good pollinator resource. Plains coreopsis is one that I've had. I think I don't remember if I actually actively collected seed of this for my prairie garden, but one of them came up last year. One plant, and it's an annual. And I collected as much of the seed off of it as I could to give away to people, but I didn't collect all of it. And this year I had about 40 or 50 of them. And I think next year I might have more. So if anybody wants some Plains coreopsis seed, I've got some for you. Similarly, cowpen daisy is another really great large. They get 4 or 5 feet tall, maybe taller if they're really happy, but they'll grow in really, like I've got an area in my backyard where the dog just kind of runs in circles and the ground is just packed down like adobe, and they're growing up out of that. They start flowering in kind of mid-late June, and they'll flower all the way until you get a frost. And so they're a really great summer flowering plant for pollinators. Some more annuals. Y'all know about palafoxias. So they're also in the aster family. The plants themselves, they tend to be kind of like spindly and kind of really open. And then the flowers are these little kind of puffballs of pinkish purple. But I always find all kinds of bees on mine. And this is another one where I collected a few seeds off of a kind of a dry caliche area and threw them out in my prairie garden, and now I've got I'm in there cutting them down because they'll make a bush like this tall, in 1 year. Last year I cut mine back like 3 different times and they were still just blooming everywhere. And they'll bloom from like mid-late summer all the way through the fall. Partridge pea is one of our kind of weedy legumes. And these will grow in just about any kind of soil. They really like sandy soils and kind of loose soils, but they'll grow in other soils as well. Then another one that flowers through the summer, and these are a host plant for several different butterfly species. A lot of the sulfur butterflies use these, their caterpillars use these as hosts, and then bees and all sorts of other things will visit the flowers. One of our kind of mid to late spring flowering weedy wildflowers is called blue curls, Facile congesta. That's this one here with the carpenter bee on it. And they grow, anywhere from 3 to 4 or 5 feet tall, and just get these big exploding inflorescences of blue flowers that are just really great. They'll spread themselves around like all of these, but if you have one year, you'll probably have more the next year. So you got to be okay with that, or go out and pull them when they come up. But another really great kind of mid to late spring flower. Annual wine cups. Have y'all seen annual wine cups? Yeah, they get nice and tall. What they really like to do is they like to find like a shrubby area and then kind of crawl all up through the shrubs. And so you could kind of use them that way, where you've got maybe a hedge or something, and that way they don't just fall over when they get tall. That's kind of how I do with them. And there are actually several different kinds of bees that specialize only on mallow pollen for plants in the mallow family. And so they really like these wine cups, so that they're really good for those mallow bees. And then there's several species of horse mint, or what I called horse mint, a lot of people call bee balm, monarda, that grow around here. If you go in the hill country, the real common one is that lemon bee balm. And then in the sandy lands out here, the spotted bee balm is a lot more common. This is the third one that you may or may not know. This is called basil bee balm. And I think it's really pretty and ornamental. But it's found kind of usually in sandier areas where you'll find spotted bee balm. Sometimes you'll find basil bee balm as well. So it's one to look for if you happen to see some. Collect the seed. This stuff is just super easy to grow from seed, even for me, which is saying a lot. Some perennial weeds. Anybody have violet ruellia in their yard? Acres of it. So this is a really great plant. There are several caterpillars that use this as a host plant. I've seen hummingbirds on mine this year. When other stuff is not blooming as much, they'll really go to these. Lots of moths and bees use them. It's a really super easy to grow plant. You throw out a couple seeds and then it'll just kind of pop up everywhere. And so, like a lot of these, if you've got an area that's really disturbed, if say your yard is really disturbed, and you don't have those deep, healthy soils, really compacted soils, a lot of these plants are going to do really well. And they're going to spread around, but they're doing a job, right? Bundle flowers. There's several different species of desmanthus. The bundle flowers is another legume. They all tend to be kind of short. They look a little bit like a mimosa or an acacia with those little puffball flowers, but they don't have any thorns or prickles on them, is one of the differences. They're actually good grazing for sheep and cows and stuff like that too, so they use them a lot in like rangeland restoration. But we have 2 or 3 pretty common species around here that you can find that will, if you're doing some kind of wildscaping or trying to add some diversity back, that are really good pioneer legume. Prairie verbena. This is one of the best butterfly plants that I've seen. And it pops up out of just like hard-packed bare clay. And I don't know how it got there or how it can grow, but it grows really well in those hard clay soils. And it blooms generally throughout the summer until if we get 2 months of really dry, it'll kind of die off. But this year, the ones that I've got, they've just kept blooming and kept blooming and kept blooming because we keep getting a little bit of rain here and there, so they're looking great. And then fragrant gaillardia. So the Indian blanket was a gaillardia, an annual one. This is a perennial gaillardia. Have y'all seen this one before? It's got a bunch of different names. They call it perfume balls, fragrant gaillardia. My wife thinks it kind of stinks, and so she doesn't like any of those names. But I think it kind of smells good. It does like if you get within a foot or so of it, you can definitely smell it. It has a nice little scent to it. But it's another really great butterfly plant. And it'll kind of just, if you have a little clump somewhere, over the course of 4 or 5 years, it'll just kind of start popping up a little here, a little there, and you get lots of flowers in the spring. Some more perennial weeds. Heath aster. There are several different asters that grow around here. Heath aster to me is kind of the weediest of all of them. I've seen it growing in areas where a really disturbed roadside, and the only things that are growing there are King Ranch bluestem and heath aster. And so it can tolerate really, really poor soils. It'll grow up from seed in 1 year to be kind of a bushy thing. I had some that I put in my little prairie garden. Within 1 year, I was having to cut them back. But then they flower in the kind of late fall. Some of these will keep flowering all the way until like December if you don't get a really hard freeze. And so this is a really good pollinator plant for those pollinators later in the year. Gum weeds are one of my absolute favorite weeds. Do y'all know about grandelias? Anybody have any grandelias in their yard? Gum weeds. So there's 2 or 3 different species of gum weeds around here. This one is called lance leaf gumweed. It has those kind of elongate lance leaves. This one grows in kind of caliche soils. If you go out in the hill country anywhere there's a kind of a dry, white baked hillside, the only thing that'll be flowering on it right now is the palafoxia and the gumweed. And they're just going to be looking like they're having the time of their life out there. There's another one that likes a little bit deeper clayier soils called Lone Star gumweed, and it starts flowering a little early, maybe late May, early June, and goes to about August. And the other one, the lance leaf gumweed, starts in late June, July, and goes into the fall. And then there's another fall flowering one as well. One you guys may know is mealy blue sage. Anybody have mealy blue sage? It grows it'll grow in really poor soils. It'll grow in good soils too. It's not really picky. It'll just kind of grow anywhere. And it's another great plant that will flower in the spring. And then if it gets rain, it'll flower again in the fall. If you get rain in the summer, it'll kind of flower anytime that it's got water. Now, a lot of people are scared of goldenrods. Is anybody here scared of goldenrods? I was scared of goldenrods because I've seen these old fields where a goldenrod comes in. And there may be nothing out there but Johnson grass and goldenrod, but the goldenrod, just because it sends all these long stems underground and just kind of grows and grows and grows out. And so goldenrod's always kind of scared me. But I found a couple of goldenrods here local that are not as scary. This one is called rough goldenrod, Solidago radula. And there's one that looks really similar to it that's called gray goldenrod or prairie goldenrod, Solidago nimeralis, and they both grow they prefer kind of more limestoney soils, but they'll grow in other soils as well. They just like good drainage. And they form kind of a nice little mound, maybe 2-3 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide. They're super easy to grow from seed, and they're a really good fall flowering plant for pollinators. When the monarchs are coming back through in the fall, they're looking for nectar. This is a really great nectar plant for those, and really easy to grow. And not quite as crazy invasive as the giant goldenrods. So, and then speaking of giant and crazy and invasive, Maximilian sunflowers. Anybody have Maximilian sunflowers? Oh, yeah. So I got a little busy today. I was going to bring a bunch of little pups of my Maximilian sunflowers that are taking over my prairie garden. But you can see last year, I didn't water them. It was second year of drought, and they're looking as fresh as a daisy out there. Some of our weedy grasses, a lot of people don't think about putting in grasses in their yards because they're not these big ornamental things, but they can be really important as habitat. There's a lot of things that eat grasses. And when you think about grasses, you got to have cool season grasses and warm season grasses. Otherwise, you don't have grasses all year long. These are all ones that are really easy to grow from seed and in poor soils in this area. Canada wild rye. That was one of my kind of when I was planting my new prairie gardens, that was one of the first things that just comes up and is vigorous and does really great right from the beginning. If you have a little bit more of an area with some part shade, 3-flower millet grass is a really kind of dainty, beautiful seed head on it that flowers in the spring. Not a lot of people know about that one, but it's actually fairly common in this area. And then as you go here west, and it's really easy to grow and tolerates, dry shade. As does Texas winter grass. This is one that we called spear grass when I was a kid. And my kids, that's what my kids call it, and they like to, throw the little spears. But this is one of those grasses, if you've got a really tough area that you're trying to revegetate, it can really tolerate, especially clay soils, it can tolerate really poor soils. And will come up and be one of those first grasses to kind of be a nurse grass for everything else. There's actually a cool season annual grass called little barley. It's the same genus as the barley that we get from Europe and Asia, but it's a North American species called Hordeum pusillum. And you've probably seen it because it grows in parking lots and yards, and this looks like little miniature barley flowers. And that's one, if you can find seed of that, it's another really great plant just to have something green during the winter when you're trying to establish other vegetation. And it's not really, it doesn't produce like a ton of shade, so it'll come up and kind of fill in the gaps here and there. It's not going to really bully the other plants. And then threons are another good one. They're kind of in between a cool season and a warm season grass. They flower a little bit later than most of the cool season grasses, but they are active and grow a lot during the winter. And they're really easy to grow from seed as well.
Is the little barley edible?
I would say it's probably one of those things that people would classify as like a survival food. There's just not a lot to it. It's like if you go try to eat like the little walnuts down the river, like you're gonna be, a lot of work for not a lot of calories.
Where does Texas cup grass fall into?
Oh, which one? Okay, so let me point these out so you guys know which ones are which here. So the windmill grasses are another really good kind of warm season weedy grass. There's 3 really common species here in this area, which are hooded windmill grass. What's this one called? Chloris verticillata. I have this condition where I can only remember the scientific name or the common name at one period of time. Tumble windmill grass, that's what they call it. So there's hooded windmill grass, tumble windmill grass, and then one that's really common in yards that most people don't know about. It's called slim spike windmill grass, and it's really low and compact and has these kind of daintier, smaller seed heads. And then all 3 of those hybridize with each other, and so you almost never find like one that's just pure tumble windmill grass. It's always kind of a mix. But they all like disturbed areas, poor soils, especially clayey soils, and they're all really great for revegetating areas. Pretty much all of the tridents. So this right here is Texas tridents. This one does really well in kind of rocky or clayey soils. There's white tridents, which grows in kind of like ponded, wet areas that then get really hot and dry in the summer, which is kind of a unique little niche. There's a few other tridents, and they all are adapted for, they're kind of pioneer species. They come in and they'll help cover that ground. Texas cupgrass is a really great, I would say this one is kind of more of an early to mid successional grass. You'll find it in other areas where you have bigger grasses as well, and it'll eventually will form these nice kind of big clumps, maybe 2 or 3 feet around, with these tall seed heads that will stick up 4 or 5 feet up. But these are really great for a lot of seed-eating birds. You'll see like painted buntings really like them. A lot of the sparrows really like them. So this is a really great, if you're doing like revegetation and you're trying to create like bird habitat, this is a really good species, and they'll flower kind of any time of the year that they get some rain. So I might have flowered in the spring, they'll flower in the summer, they'll flower in the fall, and put on lots of seed. There are several of what I'd lump in as the silver blue stems, both Cloa species, and these are all kind of related to the old world blue stems. So the King Ranch blue stem and Clayburgh blue stem, they're kind of close cousins of those, but that originated here in North America. And so they will occupy a lot of the same kind of areas where you find those old world blue stems, and will compete with them and do just fine. And so if you have an area where you're not really wanting KR or one of these other blue stems to come in and take over, you can put these in to your seed mix, and they'll kind of help fill in that space and kind of hold that space for other natives. And then finally on here I have switchgrass, which I wouldn't recommend that you put it just everywhere. But if you've got a big area and you're trying to do restoration on a big scale, this is the easiest, most foolproof, big, tall grass that you can get here that grows in this area. It grows up from seed rigorously. I've seen seedlings that the first year they were this tall, and I dug them up and there was like a giant root clump that was 2 feet across and almost 2 feet deep. They're just extremely vigorous. They do like a little bit more water, so like kind of low areas, ditches and things like that. But some of the prairie restoration projects that I've been out on, they go in and they put all of the different seeds, 100 different species of seeds, and year 3 through 10, the only thing out there that's going to be real big and tall is going to be switchgrass. Not the only thing, but it's going to definitely dominate in those early stages because it is so weedy and aggressive. But it also it produces a lot of great seed for birds and insects, and it provides a lot of cover and habitat for smaller animals. So, and if it gets to be 10 feet tall, like I've seen it sometimes even for larger animals. And then we have some kind of weeds for shady areas, and so these are all what I would call more like ground covers, things that stay kind of low, and that you could run over with the mower and not really affect them. Hairy tube tongue, this one with the little purple flowers. Some of you guys probably have this in your yard, maybe not even know it. But it's a small member of the acanthus family that it likes part shade. It'll grow in mostly sun. It's a little bit slow to establish if you're trying to get it going from cuttings or from transplants. But once it gets established, it'll kind of spread and cover a pretty good area. So it's like either lawn alternative or something to mix into your lawn to add some diversity and some flowers.
Does it do rhizomes? Does it go out?
I think it sort of slowly spreads and then will reroot where it touches, yeah.
It has really dense roots, thick roots.
They're really dense and thick, but they're not very deep. They tend to be real shallow. Straggler daisy. Some places will actually sell this as a shade-tolerant ground cover. It's one of the kind of the most foolproof, like put it out there and it'll spread. And it tolerates shade, it tolerates foot traffic, it tolerates lawnmowers, dogs, whatever you can throw at it.
What does it designate that you're missing in your soil if you have a lot of that?
What does it show about your soil?
No, what you said that a lot of these weeds usually is an indication that you're missing some nutrient in your soil. So if you have a lot of that straggler daisy, what would that say about?
I don't know. There probably are people that have looked at that. I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, okay.
I would say a lot of these are characteristic of really compacted soils, and they're some of the only plants that will grow in those soils while they're really hard and compacted. And then as they grow and kind of get their roots down and break up that compaction, then other plants will be able to come in and establish deeper roots. So I know that straggler daisy does really well in hard compacted clay soils, because that's what I've got. Violet wood sorrel likes a little bit sandy or loamier soil, but if you live out here in the sandy lands and you've got kind of a little shady area, Oxalis violacea is a really great ground cover. Puts on these little pink flowers in the spring, and you can eat the leaves. They're actually, all of the oxalis are high in oxalic acid, which is kind of sour, kind of tart. And my kids, from the time they were little, every time they see them, they go and pick them. They call them wood sorrels, and they're really good. You can't eat too much of them because oxalic acid can interfere with like iron absorption if you get too much in your diet. But if you eat it here and there, like we talked about how people use plants as medicine to help kind of make sure you're getting all those minerals and nutrients in your diet. They're a really great just kind of thing to munch on here and there.
So which leaves? The petals or the flowers or the green leaves?
You can eat the whole thing. You can eat the flowers, you can eat the little fruits are particularly sour when you eat them. Yeah, the whole plant is edible. Ponyfoot, this is one that some people fight. I don't know why people fight this plant. It's never done anything mean to me. It'll kind of grow and form a carpet along the ground. It stays really low. It's not particularly ornamental, but to me that's a great low maintenance plant that I can tolerate.
Is that dollar?
Yeah, people call it dollar weed. There's other things that people call dollar weed too, so you got to be, this is one of our native weedy ground covers. And then lyre-leaf sage. Lyre-leaf sage will bloom for a couple of weeks in the spring, but once it blooms and you let the seeds shatter and fall, if you cut it down with the mower, you'll have all the little rosettes all the rest of the year, and over time they'll kind of fill in these shady areas. And the leaves are kind of purple and green, kind of speckled. They're just a really pretty ground cover that some people don't know about. So, and then lastly, these are kind of the shady things that are maybe a little bit bigger and maybe not as lawnmower friendly or as HOA friendly. One of my absolute favorite plants that we talked about, the violet ruellia, Drummond's ruellia or Drummond's wild petunia, is this kind of big bushy thing here. And it puts on the little pairs of the purple flowers from about the first hot day we get in June until the first freeze we get in November. And as long as it's got a little bit of shade, even if you don't really even water it much, as long as it's got a little bit of shade, it'll usually stay happy and healthy and bloom pretty much throughout that whole period. So it's another really one of these great, you're thinking about what are all these pollinators doing in the summer when there's no plants, no flowers. Well, you got to have the kind of flowers that are going in the summer. Drummond's aster is another one of our fall blooming asters. It blooms a little bit before the heath aster, so you can kind of get a succession of those aster blooms. If you do Drummond's aster and fall aster and heath aster, they all kind of bloom a little bit different, offset from each other. This one gets a little bit taller, and so if you have it in a shady area, it's good to put other things around it so it doesn't get really tall and fall over. I call it tipping aster sometimes, because mine likes to grow real tall and then tip over when it flowers. But I've learned to tolerate that. So, and then marble seed. This is another really good spring blooming plant in the forget-me-not family. It has these really odd flowers that are mostly closed except at the very tip, and they attract bumblebees. Bumblebees really love these in the spring. And then they'll all three of these, once you have a few of them, they'll seed themselves out all over your yard, and you'll have lots of them, which is a great thing, right? And then lastly, we have two grasses on here that like dry shade and do really well in dry shade, and that's Southwest bristlegrass. This is kind of our biggest, most robust bristlegrass that we have. These big kind of fluffy seed heads in the fall, and they'll get, if they're really dry, they'll only get 2 or 3 feet tall. If they're really happy, they'll be 4 or 5 feet tall. Really good source of bird feed later in the fall when those get ripe. And then one of my absolute favorite grasses that nobody seems to know about is rusty seed paspalum. This is kind of a big, vigorous individual here, growing next to a pot. You can see they get about 2 or 3 feet around. Nice, big, thick, green, glossy leaves. The seed heads are not really all that ornamental. They're kind of small and thin. But you can either have them like that and have them fill in spaces, or if you've got them in another area where you go through and mow them down, they'll just kind of grow flat, and they'll make almost like a lawn. And so you can either keep them tall and bushy, which tall and bushy is only 2 or 3 feet, or you can have them grow into other areas and mow them down. And so they kind of work both places. So in conclusion, what are weeds after all? Are they a problem, or are they a symptom of some other problem? If we think about, most weeds are there because there's something wrong with the soil that they're able to compete better because they're adapted to be pioneers. Rather than focusing all of our attention and money and resources on trying to kill the weeds, why don't we put that into trying to fix what's wrong with the soil, and the weeds will take care of themselves, unless it's Johnson grass.
All three of those pictures bordering your property?
The bottom one is one of the areas of my little prairie garden. The other two are rain gardens in the city that the city of Austin installed. And one of those they put in switchgrass, which was doing really, really well even last year during the drought. The other one is another weedy aster that we didn't talk about today, but that was doing really, really well last year. Weeds are, one way to think of them is that they're hardy pioneers that prepare the way for others. And so they go out and they colonize those areas where nothing else can grow, they improve the conditions, and then other plants are able to come in and move in. They can be allies in our quest to improve soil health, and overall they're a vital part of this whole web of life. And so they're used by all the things that eat their leaves and drink from their flowers and eat their seeds and feed on their root exudates. All of that is all wrapped up in this whole web of life. So with that, I saw a couple hands. I will take questions.
The bull meadow plant is a very interesting plant. It has these lovely white lily flowers, and yet you touch it and it burns the heck out of you.
Yes.
Is it because of the spines that do it, or is there some kind of a chemical on the bull meadow plant that causes that pain to the skin?
It's both. So bull nettle actually has these little, they're like little glass hypodermic needles. They're made of silica, and they inject formic acid. And so they stick in you, they break off, they irritate, and then that formic acid causes that burn.
And yet the flower is so beautiful. Just the white, soft, delicate.
Yeah. Hummingbirds actually love them.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Why are grass birds good?
Why are grass burrs good? So grass burrs do really well in like bare, sandy areas, and they'll come in like if you were say trying to revegetate just a bare patch of sand. They're one of those early successional weeds that comes in, covers the ground, and eventually, once the little blue stem and the brown seed paspalum and all those other plants move in and kind of take over, they'll be shaded out because they're not going to be able to compete with those bigger, taller grasses. I wouldn't encourage, like I could come up with other weedy things that I would plant if I was trying to intentionally vegetate a sandy area, just because I want to be able to walk through it. But they're part of nature's Band-Aids.
Yeah, you need a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Anybody else right here?
I'm just curious, do you have a homeowners association?
I do have a homeowners association, and they have written me a couple of letters. They've never told, I've never gotten like a cease and desist sort of thing. But yeah, I do try to periodically go through and trim things up and try to make it at least. I'm just trying to do like what's the least amount of manicuring I can do to satisfy the minimum requirement.
And also, I have a plant, it's a weed, it's what I call weed. It's got kind of gray leaves, and it has a purple flower that then later turns into a green ball. And it's about that high. Okay, it's a test.
Turns into a green.
You don't have a gray? No, I don't know if
And it's, you think it's something native that just comes up volunteer? Or you think it's like something that's like came from a greenhouse somewhere?
No, it can come from greenhouses.
If you want to email me a picture, I'll send it to them.
Yeah, I'll take
it.
Yeah. I'm always, people are always sending me pictures of plants. What's this? What's this? I don't mind doing that at all.
Look at my weed.
All right, well thank you guys. Oh, one more here. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I pull weeds because I'm afraid they're taking the nutrients out of the soil. So you're saying that that's not so much a concern?
Probably not usually. What you can do, like if you have a weedy plant that you don't want, some of them you can just cut them off at the surface and they'll die and the roots will stay in the ground and decompose in the ground, and that's good. But if they're one that's going to keep spreading over time, pull them before they go to flower, and then just drop them and leave them where they are, and then they'll mulch the soil. So anything they took will be given back. All right, well, thank you guys. You're a wonderful audience. I think everyone wants to come talk to you.
Thank you that you for coming out and for y'all are a great audience today. And I think I have a misconception of what's a wildflower and a weed, but that's a personal.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
Because I'm saying that in my world they're wildflowers. But we'll have you back after the first of the year doing a different presentation for us. Okay. Thank you.
So my weeds, that was okay. Hard to propagate, but I can try to propagate
I've never had enough time to get seeds, so.
Yeah, I've tried to seeds, I've tried giving them up.